Number 7. Melissa Dacia and Niesh Rivera. Exotic dancers Melissa Dacia and Niesh Rivera, aged 22 and 25 respectively, were arrested by law enforcement in Pawtucket, Rhode Island, for stealing a police officer's gun in February of 2019. The latter had been communicating with Rivera, who'd assumed the pseudonym Natalia on Instagram. Aside from dancing, she worked as an escort and had been among several exotic dancers arrested for offering illegal services at the Foxy Lady in Pawtucket in December of the previous year. She and the off-duty officer went to Nara Lounge in Providence, where they met Dacia before the trio headed to the Cadillac Lounge Gentlemen's Club. Prior to doing so, the Boston officer, whose identity wasn't disclosed, secured his service Glock handgun with a cable lock in the glove compartment of his BMW 328i. After going to the club, the trio went to the officer's room at the Hampton Inn to reportedly hang out. In the early hours of the morning, Dacia claimed she needed to retrieve a charger from the officer's car, and he gave her the keys. She briefly came back and said she needed to step out and make a call before leaving again. Rivera claimed she'd go look for her, but both women never returned. The officer then checked his car and found that his pistol was missing from the glove box, at which point he alerted local authorities. Both of the women were subsequently arrested and charged with felony larceny of a firearm and conspiracy, while the officer's weapon was retrieved. Number 6. Lee Grace Dougherty. Leading up to August of 2011, Florida woman Lee Grace Dougherty, aged 29, had worked as an exotic dancer and adult model, but her career abruptly ended when her brother got into legal trouble. She lived in Lacoochee, Florida, along with her younger brothers Ryan and Dylan, aged 21 and 26 respectively. The trio all had criminal records, but the former had recently violated the terms of his parole by engaging in inappropriate online communication with a minor. Lee Grace and Dylan orchestrated an escape plan of taking their brother to Mexico. On August the 2nd, the trio's white Subaru Impreza was spotted by a Zephyr Hills police officer going over the speed limit on US 301. When the officer initiated a traffic stop, the Doughertys engaged him in a 100-mile-per-hour chase. The pursuit ended in about 4 miles after Dylan had shot at the cruiser up to 20 times. One of the bullets struck a tire, disabling the vehicle as the trio sped out of the county. They then carried out a bank robbery in Valdosta, Georgia. The Doughertys entered the building wearing masks, and one of them discharged an AK-47 into the ceiling before they made off with roughly $5,200. The trio's rampage ended in Pueblo, Colorado, 9 days after it had begun, in a shootout with local law enforcement. By then, Lee Grace had become one of the U.S.'s most wanted women. As the Subaru was chased by officers, Ryan drove it at speeds of up to 120 miles per hour, weaving in and out of traffic through construction zones and highway shoulders. Simultaneously, Dylan shot at pursuing cruisers with the AK. The 20-mile chase ended with Ryan crashing into a highway guardrail. He and Lee Grace jumped out of the disabled vehicle and fled on foot, but Dylan was arrested while still inside. When law enforcement closed in on them, the exotic dancer pointed a machine pistol at an officer and was non-fatally shot in the thigh. The Doughertys were taken into custody. During a court appearance a few days later, Lee Grace caught media attention by smiling in court and appearing to be in high spirits while still wheelchair-bound from the injury. She told the court, "I pointed the gun at the cop. I deserve to get shot." No fatalities or major injuries were reported during the Doughertys' rampage, but their actions resulted in a plethora of charges for which each was sentenced to decades behind bars. Number 5. Christina Hensley. 35-year-old exotic dancer Christina Hensley was sentenced to 10 years in prison in April of 2011 after pleading guilty to involuntary manslaughter and failure to stop after an accident. In August of the previous year, she'd been called to the home of Jai Chow in Monroe, about 25 miles north of Cincinnati, Ohio, for a private show. Hensley would later tell the authorities that Cho had touched her inappropriately during the performance, prompting her to leave his home. The prosecution would argue during her trial that she'd fled the residence after robbing Cho. The latter went outside and jumped in front of Hensley's SUV, trying to stop her. The exotic dancer accelerated, ran the 31-year-old man over, and dragged him underneath her car for more than a mile before stopping at a gas station. Cho was mangled beneath the vehicle and suffered multiple blunt force trauma injuries that resulted in his death. The autopsy photos were described as very hard to look at by the Hamilton Journal news media outlet. Hensley, who at the time worked as a dancer to support her 3 children, subsequently told the police that she'd felt her SUV strike something but maintained she had no idea Cho was beneath it when she started driving away. She was initially charged with murder, aggravated robbery, theft, and failure to stop before pleading guilty to lesser charges. Number 4. Leon Zbadowski. In February of 2013, a brawl erupted at the Baltic Inn in the village of Pontiates, South Wales, following the last-minute replacement of a male exotic dancer. Roughly 150 women had packed into the pub to watch an experienced performer named Fabio, whom they'd each paid £10 to see. He had to cancel, and the fantasy strip agency sent in 29-year-old novice performer Leon Zbadowski, who, come showtime, walked on stage in a fireman's uniform that didn't fit properly. The crowd soon reacted in disappointment. As reported by one woman in attendance, he lacked Fabio's signature six-pack and looked like he'd come off the street. She went on to say that Zbadowski, a practicing boxer, looked like he'd been hit in the face with a wok. Additionally, the man didn't have a dance routine and spat frothy cream at the women before he sat on a chair in the middle of the stage and just glared at them. The women started booing and throwing napkins at the stage, which enraged Zbadowski. He jumped into the ladies' night crowd and started attacking them. He pulled a woman's hair before charging the compere and the manager. 5 police cars were sent to break up the scuffle and Zbadowski was taken into custody. He subsequently admitted 3 common assault charges and was ordered to undergo a mental health evaluation. Number 3. Bingo and exotic dancing. A nursing home in Taiwan issued a public apology in September of 2022 after a video went viral of an exotic dancer entertaining more than a dozen wheelchair-bound seniors. Staff at Taoyuan Veterans Home, a state-run facility in Taoyuan City for retired army personnel, decided to hire an exotic dancer as part of upcoming Harvest Festival celebrations. On September the 7th, in what would have been an ordinary bingo afternoon for residents, a young woman wearing high heels and lingerie arrived at the nursing home. She began her routine, which also involved giving the seniors lap dances as they and staff clapped along to music. The dancer was vivaciously interacting with the residents and at one point was seen pushing her breasts into a senior's face. The footage went viral, and while the consensus was that the dancer was just doing her job, the veterans' home decision to hire her was criticized. A spokesman subsequently apologized, arguing that the young woman's moves had been too enthusiastic and fiery, and pledged to be more careful when planning such events in the future. Today's topic was requested by Mummy 2 Libras and Sassy Serena. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. Chad Satchel. The elite special response group in Perth, Australia, closed down a street in the city in August of 2022 following reports that a man clad in a bulletproof vest and carrying an assault rifle had been spotted in the Kings Street area. Heavily armed law enforcement units swarmed on the suspect, identified as 31-year-old Chad Satchel. They learned that in spite of the initial panic, the man wasn't an active shooter but an exotic dancer on his way to work. His costume was meant to be a provocative version of a SWAT officer, and his rifle, in spite of its realistic appearance, was intended to be a prop. He was detained without incident and was reported as cooperative in the immediate aftermath. The adult performer still faced a hefty fine or even jail time, as the police suspected his rifle was a gel pellet blaster. which shoots water-filled gel projectiles at up to 100 meters per second. They were outlawed in Western Australia as part of an effort to combat criminal elements who would smuggle the replicas into the country and convert them into real weapons. As of subsequent developments, the police were conducting tests on Satchel's confiscated rifle to determine whether the prop feature had been disabled. The exotic dancer faced maximum penalties of up to 3 years in jail and a $36,000 fine. Number 1. Jasmine Clifford. In 2021, an exotic dancer from New Jersey was identified as the mastermind behind an operation that produced and sold at least 250 fake COVID-19 vaccination cards. As reported by the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, 31-year-old Jasmine Clifford advertised the fraudulent services using the Instagram account Anti-Vax Mama. She would charge $200 per card, and for an additional $250, customers could get their name in the New York State Immunization Information System. Her alleged co-conspirator, 27-year-old Nadeza Barkley, handled the registration through her position at a medical clinic in Pachogue. Over a dozen of the exotic dancer's customers were public-facing individuals from New York who worked in hospitals or nursing homes. After an investigation into the operation, Clifford and Barkley were arrested and each charged with offering a false instrument for filing and conspiracy, while their customers were charged with criminal possession of a forged document. As part of their efforts in bringing down the scam, officers had posed as prospective buyers. One of them contacted Clifford on June the 25th of 2021 and received a fake vaccination card after paying the fee, thus securing evidence against her. Another undercover officer paid to be introduced into the New York vaccine database, and Clifford subsequently sent them a screenshot indicating his info had been added. Thanks for watching. For a month, would you rather work as an exotic dancer in a seedy nightclub or alone at a research station in Antarctica? Let us know in the comments section below.